Salam guys! Welcome to Twice Inspired with Habiba
and Shukri.
So we really hope this podcast will inspire you.
We're just two best friends who love to have deep, meaningful conversations.
And even though the things we're going to talk about are nothing new,
sometimes it's helpful to hear it twice so you can be twice inspired. Assalamu alaikum guys, welcome to episode 17 of Twice Inspired. Today we have another very special guest and I'm so excited to announce Salma.
Hi guys, my name is Salma Ali. I'm the owner of Undisturbed Peace. Thank you so much for having me on, babes.
No problem. Okay, that's Undisturbed Peace on IG. Is that exactly how it is? How should people follow you?
Yeah, it's like undisturbed_peace. Yeah, on Instagram.
Excellent, thanks. Okay, so firstly, thanks so much for coming on.
You're welcome, babes.
So Salma's like, I don't know, Salma's like my little sister. That's how I view Salma.
Aww.
Even though obviously it's like we're not that much far apart. You're only 1 year below me, but you're like my sister's friend. But also my friend. That's how I feel.
Yeah, of course.
And yeah, so Salma is a licensed therapist. And she's also got her Instagram page. So we're just gonna have a conversation and kind of talk through that. So I guess like the place to start is like, first of all, how are you? How have you been?
I've been good, babes. I've been good. I've had a good week. Just came back from holiday, so that was good.
Oh.
And yeah, it was nice. I'm back to reality now, but yeah, I'm glad to be back.
It's always nice to have that break, so that's good.
100%.
Yeah. So where did it all start? Like, so did you always know, like in terms of therapy, like did you always know you wanted to be a therapist? And what was that journey like? What steps did you take to actually get there to being a licensed therapist?
I didn't know I was from a young age. I wasn't like, oh my god, I want to be a therapist. I don't think I knew much about therapy. I think I knew I was interested in psychology 100% from such a young age, and because I get this question a lot in regards to like, what made you do this, in terms of like this career path. So with me, it started off like I was really interested in the human mind. I know that's a generic answer for every psychology like application, but I was always so curious to like people's behaviors, people's interactions, and I was like, oh my god, I'm into psychology. And I think I did my bachelor's in psychology, and then I wanted to do my master's, but then I was like, let me take a gap year. So I took a gap year and I worked in a mental health hospital, in a CAMS hospital. So CAMS is children and adolescent mental health, and I saw a lot of stuff there. And I think with me, I saw how impactful it was for people, like with the patients, just speaking to someone. We used to have something called like key sessions where I'd speak to people and how much of a difference it made with them. And I was like, oh my God, talking does so much. And I love talking, and I love just not even talking, I love listening to people's concerns and just holding that space for them. So that's when I started to do my PG diploma in counseling and coaching. And I was like, yeah, this is the career for me.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's amazing. And like, you know, when you were like having that experience in that, did you say in the hospital?
Mm-hmm.
Like what kind of things did you see? Obviously, maybe you can't go into detail, but what was it that you were like, I want to be here and kind of experiencing it? Because obviously, you know, sometimes in those situations it can be quite sad. But what made you think like, I want to be like a part of this?
At first, I think when I first joined, it was really scary for me. At first, I was like, okay, I'm not used to this. Like, because they were inpatient, it means that they weren't safe enough to be within the community or be at home setting. So when I first joined, I was really excited. I was really eager. But then I guess the things I was exposed to, it kind of just made me realize the reality of mental health. So there's obviously, you see mental health on like with your friends or TV or how social media portrays it, but I saw how mental health can truly like impact someone's whole life and their well-being and how they view the world, how they view themselves. And I think I saw I'll say the harsh truth of mental health, like the side that no one really sees or people aren't really exposed to. And I think just sitting with them patients, and at first I used to have breakdowns at work, and I remember everyone around me was like, yes, Simon, this is normal. I was like, this is not normal. We're seeing like kids self-harm, that's not normal. And then with them, they're like, you get used to it. And like I was in every single day used to be really stressful. Like you'd be involved in restraints there where you'd have to keep them safe. Like you can't leave doors open, you can't bring certain things like contrabands in. There's certain things that you like. I remember coming home and I was always super aware. Like if I heard a door shut, I just get up And I was like, what the hell? He was down. And my mom was like, what are you doing, Salma? But it was like certain things like that, like it would impact you. But slowly, I think I developed like this emotional resilience towards it, where I was like, I need to be there for them, be strong enough. But also, I know that if you're empathetic and you're very compassionate, this job is for you.
Mm.
But if you don't have that emotional resilience, it's not for you. And I think slowly from that on, it made me realize, like, especially when you see them discharged, oh my God, I'd cry for all my patients who got discharged. I
Oh,
would literally cry. It would be so, because you see them
oh,
from the beginning towards
yeah.
the end, and I was like, oh my God, this is the life I want. Like, it's such it's a hard life, but it's so rewarding towards the end.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, no, I get that. You have to have that kind of balance of like,
Mm,
you do have to be emotional, but not too emotional where you actually can't, like, give them that help that they
function,
need.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, I was gonna ask as well, like, so why do you think it's important? So you said it has an impact on them, and like obviously for those patients, they definitely do need it.
Mm,
But what do you think about? So I feel like these days a lot of people are like, talking about therapy, getting into therapy. It's a little bit like, I don't know. I'm not going to say it's a trend, but it's like a lot of
mm.
people are talking about it, and that is a good thing. But do you think, like, how important is it, and is it important for everyone, or just if you have had like, a traumatic experience in your life?
Mm. I think before my narrative of therapy was you'd have to go through something so drastic or something that you can't cope with to go to therapy. But once, because with my experience, I want to say forced, but my course required me to go to therapy because my supervisor would be like, how can you be a therapist without not knowing how to sit on the other side of the chair? And
Yeah.
he's like, you have to know what they're going through. It's like a doctor never been like had never went to a hospital before, a teacher never sitting in a classroom before. You have to know what the other side feels like. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. And with me, I kind of wanted the narrative, I have to do this. Like I don't need it.
Mm.
But when I went, I was like, oh my God, I do need this. And I think
Mm.
everyone in a way should therapy should be accessible for everyone. You don't have to meet a certain criteria. I think we all need an objective, safe space to talk about our feelings and concerns.
Mm.
And we need a space in which we can just talk about our feelings openly without perhaps unsolicited advice or people trying to tell you like to do one thing. You just want somewhere where you can perhaps clear your head. And I
Mm.
think it's just an experience. And I always encourage everyone. I'm like, even though you feel like you have your stuff together and you feel like you can contain your own emotions, it's not about that. It's just give it a try. Like just speak for your thoughts, speak for your feelings, and give it a shot because you never know what might come out for it. Like, and I think right now I like the fact that more people are talking about therapy, and like, but I'm noticing shocking that more people are like, oh my God, you should go to therapy. So a lot of people are not like, oh, I need to go to therapy. It's more like, well, this person should go to therapy. I'm like, no, you
They
should as
recommend
well.
everyone should. No, because I always think, yeah, like I think it is definitely good, but it's like sometimes imagine you go to therapy. Like I was having this conversation with Habiba as well, actually, and I was like, imagine you feel completely fine, but because you're kind of like, to me it feels like a luxury. Like obviously, if you can afford it, if you are just in a space where you're like, do you know what? Yeah, I'm open to going to therapy, and then you uncover things that like you didn't, you weren't upset about
Yeah,
before. Do you get what I mean? It's like I'm fine now. Like I'm happy day to day. But then imagine I start therapy tomorrow and then I get upset. So it's like,
I get what you mean. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
like uncovering like that we call it like kind of worms. What people say in terms
Mm.
of like, I don't want to open something
Mm.
that I can't later close. But with therapy, they'll
Mm.
always make sure that you have resources that you can close it, if that makes sense. They'll
Mm.
make sure that you do have your own resources to contain that information. And if them things were going to come out in therapy, they were going to come out in, for example, even
Nice.
regardless of
Yeah.
therapy, they're going to come out in life. They're going to come out in the way you treat your kids, the way you treat your friends, the way how you respond in a work environment. They're all going to slip out in certain parts of your life anyway. So if you're scared about things coming out or you feeling worse, or I never used to feel like this, why am I feeling about it now since I started therapy? It was going to come out. It's going to come out one way or another, so you might as well slowly start. And with
Yeah.
a big misconception about therapy is the fact that people feel like they have to talk about everything. And
Mm.
especially with trauma therapy, one thing we get taught is that you don't have to discuss the whole trauma, or you don't have to talk about everything,
Mm.
because you just talk about the things that matter to you. You don't force yourself to talk about things that perhaps you're not ready to talk about or you don't want to talk about. Just go by your instincts. So your therapist is not going to be like, sure, could you tell me from A to Z your childhood from the age of 5 years old, what happened? Like, she's not gonna force you to unpack things that you're not ready to or you're not willing to.
Yeah, no, I get that. That makes sense. And like with that conversation I was having with Habiba, she said that there was someone that she knew and they thought they were completely fine and something had happened in their childhood or whatever, but then she was completely fine until, like, as you kind of said, like until she had kids, and then it came out in that. And it's true. I think a lot of people think that they're fine in life, and then once they get to the age, they're like, oh, actually this happened to me or whatever it is, and then it comes back up. And then it's good to do it like now if you think you're fine, because you can deal with it. But if you leave it until later, do you know what I mean? Then a big situation has happened.
100%. You don't want to wait until, because people, I think, only wait until breaking points to then see like, oh, I need to address this now, because they wait until it's the last moment or when things get really hectic to deal with stuff, when it's kind of like, well, you can speak about this now and we'll make you feel safe. Like, the only therapy is built to make you feel safe and contained. Like, although, for example, the sessions are quite structured, for example, and like 50-minute sessions, they'll always make sure that you leave feeling somewhat contained, and they'll remind you that, hey, we've got a session next week. They'll make sure that you're bounded with your thoughts. Like, try not to think about this until you come into our session. They're not going to make you like try to suppress it by saying, oh, thanks for talking about it. Now, next topic. They'll make sure that you feel contained in some ways.
Yeah.
So you don't feel like you're holding it all by yourself.
That is good. Actually, like as well on that, because since we're talking about like how good it is and stuff, like I asked people on Instagram sending questions as well. And people, I guess a lot of people want to know this as well, because how would someone go about finding a therapist in terms of, because even in my perspective, I'm like, oh, that sounds so expensive. Is there like, what kind of options are there for people, and what types of like different therapies are there? If you know what I mean?
Yeah, most definitely. I can only speak for the UK lot, but I know another misconception is that therapy is really expensive, when it actually, well, it is, but is it? So I know if you're looking for stuff like with your anxiety or like short-term interventions, then I know the NHS does really good ones like CBT therapy, which I'm not a fan of personally. However, I know it's helped a lot of people with anxiety and people with like, the only reason I say it's not helpful for me is because the type of therapy I need isn't CBT. But I know if you're struggling with anxiety or you're an overthink or you ruminate, a lot of people with eating disorders even, CBT tends to suit them from. CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy, so it helps it's more to do with your rationale, your thinking, how you process your thoughts, the rigidity of your thoughts as well, how rigid your thoughts are. And a lot of the times I think CBT teaches you more like homework based. It gives you interventions to work on, like, so say you have this thought in your head, what's the basis of this thought and why are you placing so much meaning behind it? And also it teaches you about how your thoughts can deceive you. So with that, I know NHS based therapy, but the thing about that is there could be a long waiting time. But with me, when I was doing my placement, I was working with a charity, and that charity was giving out all my clients, they were paying £10 to £20, and they were with trainees. So I was on my last year, so they only recruit last year trainees, and all my clients had a really good time with me, and they wanted to, even after I qualified, they wanted to still take me on board. So if you really want therapy, or like even psychodynamic, or even into, which I'm going to go into later, but in like proper psychotherapy that people deem as expensive, go to charities. There's so many charities out there that make therapy so affordable. I know my therapist she was charging me £30, which is relatively cheap because she had over 15 years of experience.
Okay, and maybe like you can send them to me later. I'll put it in a post or something if people
I've got a whole like literally links in terms of affordable and cheap therapy for people.
Because I feel like even though it might cost a bit of money, we spend money on so many things. Do you know what I mean? Like you might have a gym membership to look after your health, and you need to like physical 100%. Health, and you do need to look after your mental health. And if it is something worth it, putting that towards that. And obviously, as you said, there's charities and there's the NHS and everything. People ask some really good questions, but I'm gonna so we'll get into like the I don't know, like the nitty gritty, of like what some like therapy things, because I find it so interesting. Like I'm reading this book, Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Laurie Gottlieb.
Oh, I've heard about that book. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's
one book that was recommended to us. Yeah.
yeah, it's really good because I'm like, oh my god, it's so interesting. But before we go on to that and stuff, like, I wanted to ask about your experience of like going into therapy, because obviously you did it as part of your kind of training before you became a therapist. Like, what was that experience like, even from how it made you feel? Like, did you feel vulnerable? What did you kind of realize? And then like, did your view on like therapy change after you kind of went through it?
I think my first instinct, like for my first experience of therapy, was like, it's quite bad. It was like a checklist for me, and I'm glad it was, because I think I came in with no expectations, and I just came in with a clear head. And because like I mentioned, my course in a way encouraged me to do it, and for me to pass my training, I had to sign off that I did my own personal therapy. So when I did it, first I looked for therapists that would be best suited for me. So the first criteria I looked for was, I don't know, it was important for me. I made sure it was a black therapist first of all, and it was a female. So I made sure I wanted them to be black and female, and those were two very important categories for me, because
Yeah.
I was looking at what would make me feel safe and what may make me feel in a way I can express my thoughts and feelings without no barriers. Even though like a lot of therapists have deal with cultural competency, they make sure that your ethnicity or your race or your gender doesn't get in between that. It's just a lot of times we just go with what makes us feel more safe, and where I wouldn't have to explain so much, I guess. So I was looking at that first. So
Yeah.
then I saw her criteria. She was an integrative therapist. So she was,
Mhm.
what integrative means is that she works with many modalities. So she wouldn't just do CBT, she
Mhm.
would do psychodynamic, and psychodynamic is more about the unconscious. So
Mm.
a
Okay.
psychodynamic would be more they're more, I can't explain, but they won't take over the sessions, but they're more direct with their questions,
Yeah.
and they'll try to help you explore your unconscious thoughts and patterns, or why you do certain things. Like, if you answer a question, she'll be like, I've noticed that you were fidgeting in your seat, or that your eyes wandered here. She'll pick up on all these small things,
Yeah.
and
Wow. Okay.
she'll link it back to your childhood a lot of the times as
Oh
well.
my god.
And which
Yeah.
is quite, I prefer psychodynamic. They're quite direct, but also
Yeah.
my therapist was also person centered, so
Mm.
that's more client orientated. I would navigate the session. So, and she was also like transactional is when they look at script patterns, and that's my favorite type of therapy,
Mm.
because they look at your life script. So it says that when we're all born, we all create our own life scripts depending on our experience of people. So depending on how our parents interact with us or how our teachers interact with us,
Yeah.
we then create this monologue or this inner dialogue of how we then interact with other people and what role we play. So you could be a victim in a lot of the time, in a lot of the
Mm.
situations. You could be a persecutor, you could be a rescuer. So
Mm.
in a way, the way you respond to people right now in your adult life is directly linked to how the type of scripts and the type of interactions you were exposed to when you were younger. So I know she was trained in transactional therapy. So
Mm.
all of these things, I was like, you know what, I like it. She's integrative. She can use a bit of different skills. And my first session was good. I think she first asked me, so what are you looking for in therapy? And I was like, better understanding of myself, I guess, which
Yeah.
is true because I feel like I'm self-aware. But
Mm.
boy, shortly when I went, there's so many things like I was doing that I was like, wait, what? Like one
Yeah.
example that she called me up
Yeah.
about was oh, first of all, she said I'm an empath, which I kind of am very
Mm.
empathetic,
Mm.
but she said I don't know how to use it, and I
Oh.
would put other people's needs before my own, and I do that in a lot of like I'm very
Yeah.
with me. If you're someone who I'm not perhaps as close with, or someone who I don't like,
Mm.
it's very easy for me to be like assertive and be like, no, okay, well, I'm standing my ground. But if you're someone I built a relationship with and
Yeah.
someone who I highly respect,
Mm.
then my needs should be out the window. I would
Oh
literally,
no.
I
Yeah.
would hold the world for you. I would literally
Oh.
do the most for you, and it's so bad because
Mm.
there's something about. I remember my therapist said to me one day, Simon, it's okay for some people just dislike you for no reason. You don't have to find the reason. I was like, wait, what? So yeah, people will dislike you for no reason. You have to be okay with that. Like, not everyone's going to like you, and that's a
Yeah. Oh
hard
my god.
truth.
I used to really always think like, I
Mm,
don't know. I would love to go in therapy because I feel like there's a lot that I need to uncover. Even though I do think also I'm self-aware because I try to work on myself. But
yeah.
I was like that as well, where like I didn't like when people didn't like me. Even if I
Mm,
didn't really like them, I would just be like, I don't know. I just had this weird need for like, I wanted everyone to be my friend like all the time. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's weird.
It's definitely, and it's also, it's just the idea that I don't know, with me it was why it was important, and also because I think the way I had so many belief systems, and therapy, they hate belief systems. They'll try to, obviously there's some belief systems that keep you in place, that ground you, that's linked to your morality as well. Like obviously you're religious people who believe in God, those are belief systems that I'm not going to break, or they won't encourage you to break.
Yeah.
But there's other belief systems that you have, in terms of, one of my belief systems was I would have to do something to hurt someone for them not to like me, when in fact that's a bit, no, Salma, sometimes people dislike you for no reason. Like with me, I had so many belief systems in terms of friendships, in terms of and I'm like, why is that important? Like, no, like, be okay with the fact that, and it gives you power as well, and it gives you this. And if you look at situations objectively, so my therapist will always be like, objectively, Salma, did you do something that was mad or crazy? I was like, no. So why are you feeling bad? She's like, pattern up. That's, anyone else wouldn't do that, but you need to understand that it's okay for people not to like you. And I was like, even your closest friends, they may not like you for no reason, but it's hard, but you have to be okay with that. And I swear, it's kind of groundbreaking though, in a way, because it makes you feel less responsible in a way. Like, I'm not responsible for this. That's their own issues that they're projecting onto you. That's one thing I definitely learned in therapy.
Yeah. But like, how did you, so you know, sometimes you can know things, but you're like, you still have that feeling in you of like, so you're like, you don't want to feel bad about a certain situation, but it's like you almost can't help it. What kind of things can people do to like
navigate that? Yeah, I think one thing I do now is I differentiate what's my feelings and what's their feeling. Am I holding on to their feelings? For example, if someone comes up to me and they're really upset, and I know for a fact, for example, say that someone's really angry for you, and you have no understanding as to why they're angry or why they're upset, but they've placed that on you, and now you feel guilty, or you feel angry, or you feel upset for hurting them. In that situation, differentiate, like, is that my feelings or is that theirs, or am I holding on to their feelings? So in a way it helps, because I'm an empath. I feel like I would hold on to other people's feelings a lot of times, and I'll make it my own. And it's understanding that, no, that's their hurt, but also I didn't do anything to create that. So it's understanding that they're placing something on you, but you don't have to take that. They have to either work with that, and it's that truth again, in terms of, they, especially if you know objectively you haven't done anything wrong. So say someone's upset with you for no reason, you know, it's like something gaslighting, when someone gaslights you to make you feel guilty. If you know you haven't done anything wrong in that situation, try to assess it. Like we always say, be like, get out of that picture, see what's going on. I'm feeling guilty because this person is putting this on me. And with me, I'm like, oh my God, I must deal with this. No, you shouldn't have to deal with it. They have to deal with that. You just tell them, oh, I'm sorry that you obviously feel this way. However, like, I don't think I was responsible. I feel like that's why I said it, in terms of, you're not responsible for other people's feelings unless you do something intentionally hurt them. Of course, if I slap you, I'm responsible for that. But like, other than that, I'm not responsible. You need to deal with that. For example, if you're really triggered at the fact that perhaps I accidentally tripped you up, and I apologize for that, but now you're effing and blinding, and I'm like, you need to work on that. I don't know what's going on there, but
there's something in you.
Yeah, 100%. That's something you need to work on, and like, that's not mine. That's not my issue, and I'm not holding on to that. Like, you have to work on that for your own, and it gives you that empowerment as well. And it's uncomfortable, and I think it's really hard for people. But I always say to them, in terms of like, if your friend was saying this to you, or your sister or your brother, you wouldn't be telling them to hold on to them feelings. So in a way, do the same thing for yourself. Don't hold on to something that's not yours.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting, because so there's definitely those situations where it's like someone else is their own thing is going on and they need to kind of deal with that. But what about in a situation like, I don't know, so you know, in certain situations, so everyone's kind of, I know that everyone's different in their own way, and obviously you have relationships with people, and as you talk about belief systems, surely like people have different belief systems, right? So if people, imagine you're in a relationship or a friendship or anything, and it's like a person does something that upsets the other person, right? But it isn't intentional, as you just said, it isn't intentional, but that person like takes it that way. So basically, it's this, you know, that question of like, your friend said something and it really offended you,
Yeah.
But for them, they don't see it as a big deal because they didn't mean to like really hurt you or anything. It's like,
Yeah.
what should they do? Should they apologize, or should you just be like, do you know what, my friend's just like that, I'll just allow it? But
I
then you're
think,
actually upset.
yeah.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I think if you done something, for example, if someone, because you know how we all have different boundaries and we all have
Yeah.
different thresholds. So if you've done something that you didn't intentionally do to hurt them and they're upset by you, I think the most you can do is say, oh, I'm apologize. That wasn't my intention to hurt you, but I can see that it's definitely obviously impacted you and I'm really sorry about that. However, making sure that there's a boundary in terms of that, in terms of how much then you make it your response. So it's making sure that that responsibility is shared. My responsibility is that I'm really sorry that it's hurt you. That wasn't my that wasn't my intention. However, the other person now has to work on that difficult feeling, either let it go or speak to someone else about it, or just to diffuse it, or ask more questions. But they also have a responsibility in terms of, okay, now that this person has apologized, what can I do with this feeling, rather than playing this perhaps this script pattern where it's kind of like, well, no, you did this. And because in my head I always say, what is the intent behind it? And I've always been so curious about that now, especially when I'm speaking to people. So say that we have an argument with someone and I've genuinely apologized and it's a sincere apology, but they're carrying on. So they're constantly reminding me of it, or they won't let it go. I'd be like, okay, what's your intent behind this? Is it to, do you want me to suffer either at what I did, or is there something else that you're pricking at? Or have you never just liked me? Or was it something else that I've done to you in the past that you're holding on? I'd be really curious as to why you bringing it up and why haven't you let it go? And if they can't let it go, then I'll put my boundary and say, well, perhaps it's best for us to not to speak until perhaps you work on what it is. I've already apologized, I've done my part, but make sure that you don't enter a script pattern where you become this person who's constantly apologizing, or you, whenever they bring it up again, you constantly apologize. You create this power dynamic, and it's a really unhealthy friendship, and the friendship becomes toxic. And you see it with a lot of either like couples do that. They'll bring up the past, or they'll constantly remember when you did this. You can't use that as dynamite. You can't just throw it on someone, especially when you in that moment you act like you've dealt with it, but you bring it up again. I feel like that person should be aware of that script pattern. So if you see someone like that who constantly brings up the past, or who wouldn't let that go, make sure you recognize what role you're playing, because they wouldn't do that unless you responded a certain way. You need to switch up how you're responding, because you've created this unhealthy like script pattern where it's kind of like, oh, now the only interaction I have with this person is them bringing up the past and me just apologizing. Yeah, it sucks, but you're also contributing to that script pattern. They wouldn't be doing that if you didn't play a role, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. It's like you have to take responsibility for
Yeah.
your emotions and everything. Like, that is really interesting. I think it is so hard to like kind of break that pattern. Obviously, you have to like self-reflect and think, okay, this situation's already happened, the same kind of thing. Like, what can I do differently? And I think someone else also asked, like, I think these are quite similar. Like, how do you let go of past behavioral patterns? So you're talking about, you're talking about the transcripts and stuff, or the scripts. I don't know if it's the right.
Yeah, it's called transcripts. Yeah, we call it live transcripts.
Yeah, and then also, so like this pattern that you keep following, and also when your mind constantly goes back to the same thought, how do you master that? So, in a situation where maybe you shouldn't think about this, or it's not good for you to think about this. Actually, those are kind of different questions. So the first one is how do you let go of like those past things that have happened, those patterns that you keep following? What would you say? Then we'll go to the next one.
I'll say look for the need behind the pattern. So the reason why you're repeating it, it means that it's definitely serving your purpose, which is uncomfortable to hear. For example, you don't want to think that a really bad behavior mechanism is serving your purpose, even though it's probably bringing like a lot of misery in your life. You don't want to think about it in terms of how the hell is this going to bring me purpose? But in reality, if you're repeating something, it's bringing you something. So it's like, why am I holding on to this behavior pattern, or this script pattern? Why am I still doing it even though I want to let it go? So first, identify what need is bringing for you. What is the need behind it, first of all, and also what is the benefits of it? And one example would be, say that because we in therapy a lot of times we talk about this three roles that you play, like either victim, persecutor, rescuer. So if you constantly, for example, say that you want to isolate from your friends and you want to be in your room all day and you don't want to speak to someone, and you withdraw, you fall out of a lot of your friends, and you want to get out of that behavior pattern because it's in a way it's quite destructive. The one way I'll say that serves you is that the one way it's serving you is because now that perhaps people might be reaching out towards you more. So you perhaps might be getting more attention than you were in the past in terms of, oh, people are responding to me, or people are keeping a bigger eye on me in terms of that. So, and in a way, so I'm isolating from the world. It's easier for me to stay in my bedroom than go to work, or it's easier for me to stay in my bedroom than cook a meal. In a way, these things are serving you a purpose, which is really uncomfortable to think about. But if you think about it that way, it shows you to why perhaps you're holding on to it. The second thing is, what have you tried to let go of in the past, and why hasn't it worked? And also, like, so it's recognizing, okay, so this need is not for example, the reason why I'm holding on to this, it's not that great. Like, I don't want to be in my room all day. So how do you get out of that? Also, why couldn't you get out of that in the past, if that makes sense? Or what was stopping you from getting out of that in the past? Or why haven't you reached out towards your friends? I think first recognize what's driving it. And I think once you recognize what's driving it and also how it's serving you, then you're able to like paint this bigger image, and it also helps you see it from a different lens as well, especially with behavioral and patterns.
Yeah, no, I think that is definitely true. Like, once you kind of realize, then maybe you can obviously start doing different things. What about like the similar kind of thing, right, but more about like other people? So this is an interesting topic as well. So like, you know, like with criticism, okay, like, what do you think is like, for anyone in any situation, obviously with people that they care about, what is the best way to approach a situation when you're basically when you're criticizing someone, to be like, you know, you do this thing and it's actually not good? Like, when do you know that what they're saying is true? Or like, because, you know, people can get really defensive, including myself, you know, when you're like, no, I'm fine. So like, when can you, number one, why do we get so defensive? Like, that's always interesting to me. Like, why do we get so defensive? And then second of all, when do you know when to take the advice? Do you get what I mean? Like, when
Yeah, I think and the moment you get triggered, it means that you agree with some and obviously there's context behind this, but you agree with some aspects, right? For example, if someone or your mom comes to you and says you're really lazy, you don't do anything, you know, there's some aspects of truthness to that. And the reason why you're getting perhaps triggered is because it's something that you were perhaps thinking about unconsciously or consciously, but now that someone's brought it to the surface, it's like, why are you gonna bring that up? Like, why are you gonna why are you gonna bring that up? Like, you now you've made me more aware of it. Before perhaps it was more unconscious, but now you've made me more aware about it. And I guess to not feel triggered, I guess, you know, and naturally we all are defensive, and in a way it's a defense mechanism, isn't it? We don't want to feel hurt, we don't want to feel guilty, we don't want to feel ashamed. So the only way we can bounce off these uncomfortable, difficult feelings is by putting our defenses up and being like, well, I'm not that, no, I'm not lazy, I'm not this. Or what do you mean I do this? I don't do that. Like, the fact that you become defensive means that there's some element of ring to it. And I think with me, I'll say in that moment, yeah, you can be defensive, but when you go home or when you're by yourself, just see within yourself, what was it like? Try to explore, like, sit with your difficult feelings. And I know with a lot of clients they hate hearing that, but always like sit with it. Don't try to battle it away, because a lot of the times I think we're just trained to like this positive, like, it's called like fake positivity, in terms of people are like, oh my god, get up, be happy, you've got so much to smile about. No, just sit with it. Is I know it sucks, but that sadness you're feeling, that guilt you're feeling, just sit with it for a minute. And in a way it's like it's like this, the way we describe it in therapy is like, say that you're having a dinner, family dinner, say it's Eid. We use Eid in our occasion. A lot of times people use the idea of Christmas, but Eid, say you have a relative that comes over that no one likes, but in a way you put up with this relative, and you know he's coming, but the more you put up with it, it says, he's like, it's still uncomfortable, he's coming or that she's coming, but you slowly become used to it, you know how to deal with it better. But imagine every time this relative comes and you're just shutting the door and you're running in your room, or you're like, hey, Eid is ruined. Do you get it? It just becomes hard and hard to do. It's kind of like, it's an uncomfortableness, and you have to sit. The more you sit with uncomfortable feelings, the more better you are like handling it.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, because it's like everyone, as you're saying, like this toxic positivity thing of everyone just wants to be happy, 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 just
Yeah,
get up, just get on with it, because it's like, let's just be productive, anything that comes. But it's like, obviously you don't want to complain, but if like you're sad or you're upset, like I always say that as well, like you need to feel your feelings, like, and it's
feel it. Yeah,
okay to do that.
it's more than okay. Just sit, like, honestly, you're okay. Hence why I do when someone's complaining now, I'm even telling my friends, if someone's like venting to you, like ranting to you, and
Yeah,
they're really upset, yeah, let them be upset just for that 1 hour. Let them be upset, but
yeah,
boy, put boundaries. Obviously, if they're going on for like 5 hours, be like, okay, now you're pushing it, you're sitting a bit too long. But
yeah.
let them, because I think a lot of times, have you noticed, Shukri, when
Mm,
when like your friend's telling you something sad, isn't
mm,
your go-to instinct try to fix that? Okay, how can I make you feel better? Have you tried
mm,
this?
yeah.
No, I let them sit in it. I let them. I'm like, you sit in that, and they're like, Salma, and they're crying. I'm like, yeah, I know, babes, I know.
Oh,
I let them sit with that. I swear, I'm getting so much more better letting them
yeah,
feel that emotion, because I think
yeah.
naturally, Shukri, don't you notice it? You perhaps be quick to, oh my god,
Give you
like what's going
advice.
on? Like do
Yeah.
this, or like you give advice. No, just you're teaching them. And you're magnifying their feelings now. You've just basically said to them unconsciously, what you're feeling is so unsettling. I can't even hear it. Let's quickly fix it.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's actually so interesting. No, because literally it's true. Like I've always, because I watched this thing, like there's this guy on Instagram, maybe, I don't know if you know him, like I think Matt Carner or something.
Oh
And
no.
he's like this therapy guy, but I don't agree with all his videos. They're quick videos. And one of them is about like validating people's feelings. And it's like,
Mm,
it's true, like when your friend's telling you something, like, and they're upset about something, you should just let them kind of speak out, and you're like, yeah, okay, that must be really difficult, blah blah blah. Even though obviously when you give advice, you're trying to help, but
mm,
even like, you know, when you just let people get everything out, after a while
yeah,
they'll be okay with it. But if like as
they
soon as
will.
they finish speaking, or as soon as they haven't even finished, people are like, but this, but that, but this, it's like, I feel like it makes it worse.
Yeah,
I think if I feel upset about something, if people don't just let me, it's like, no, I want to feel like this now, then
yeah.
I'm
It's
more
my moment.
stronger than feeling. But if they're like, yeah, no, I understand that, and everyone just gets it, and everyone is on your side, then you can kind of like, you feel kind of satisfied, like, okay, cool, and then you can kind of start to move on from it. But if people
A
are like,
hundred percent.
do this, do that, it's because you didn't do this, then you're gonna feel like you kind of have to back yourself even more. So I
Yeah,
agree with that.
exactly, Biz. And like you're also, because you're also valid, like what you just meant, you're validating what they're feeling. But do you know when someone's upset and you just said like, okay, so let's do this. No, like you validate their feelings. They've got every right to be upset. What's happened to them is quite sad. Like
Mm.
you have to teach them what they're feeling is actually okay. Like I'm here with you. I know you're sad, and you trying to fix that, it's kind of like nah. And but then it's everyone's it used to be my go-to instinct until I just started letting, I just let people cry now. I'm like, it's
Mm.
okay, just cry it all out, babes.
um, I was also going to ask about like, everyone's trying to find happiness and everything, and maybe people go to therapy because they're like, I want to be happier. And what do you think are reasons why this day and age, like you could talk about like social media or like racism or anything like
Mm,
within our community, that is making people like so unhappy, even though we have so much. Like I always think about that, the fact that we actually have so much, but we're like maybe the most unhappy. And
yeah,
how can they start to work through that and be happier?
I guess I think the first, and this is subjective, obviously this is my opinion, but
Mm.
I don't think anyone should make happiness their goal. For example, make it their end goal in terms of I strive to be happy,
Okay,
because
that's
like
interesting. Yeah, go
yeah,
on.
because happiness is not like it's the way I describe it. Happiness is not a state; it's a feeling, and
Mm.
all feelings are fleeting. So you're excited one moment, and it will go away, or you're sad, or it will go away. It might take different. For example, you might be sad for a shorter period or a longer period. But with happiness, is another feeling. Do you get it? It's not a
Mm.
state. So if you're aiming to be happy, or you make that your end goal, you're waiting for something that you know that's never going to happen. You're never going to be permanently happy. You might be
Mm.
content,
Mm.
but also you're going to experience other feelings along the way. So in another way, that framing it in a way in terms of I'll do the small things that'll make me happy, because seeing happiness in terms of, you know what, when I am happy, I'm going to hold on to it. For example, if I go out with my friends, I go on holiday, this moment I'm going to hold on to it and cherish it, because I don't know if I'm going to get it again. Like, and in a way, it'll make it more valuable as well, because you know that it's not something that's completely 100% attainable. It's like when you find, not treasure, it's like when you find money on the floor, and you hold on to it, you know that you're not going to find that again. Obviously, the good person will try to return it, but you ain't going to return it anyway. There's no way to return the money. But you see something like that, you know the chances of you finding that money again is going to be very rare. So you hold it, and it makes it more like, do you get it, memorable in terms of, I like this feeling I'm having, but you know that feeling is going to flee. So if you're searching for happiness in a way, so that you're setting yourself up for something that you know is not going to be 100% attainable, but if you frame it in a way that I'm going to do things that make me happy, what are the small things that make me happy? And understanding that happiness as well is a fleeting feeling. You might feel happy for a long period of time, but that may be replaced with other feelings. Excitement, it might be replaced with sadness, it might be replaced with grief. But it's you welcoming all these feelings, if that makes sense, and also reminding yourself that always put in a now at the end of it. For example, saying, do you know when you're feeling sad? Like, oh, I'm feeling really sad today. Like, I'm feeling sad now. Like, put in now at the end of it, knowing that sadness is not going to be my permanent state. And I think a lot of people do that, shocker, in terms of, I'm really sad. No, you're sad now. In this moment, in this day, you're sad. But you don't know how you feel tomorrow morning. You don't know how you feel in a week's time. Or like, I'm happy now. Like, introducing the idea that these feelings are fleeting, they'll come and go. And I think that's one piece of advice I would give people who are perhaps searching for happiness.
That is really interesting. Yeah, it's true, because I was talking to Ruby about this last episode about like destination happiness, where like I kind of had that as well, where you're like, okay, I'll do this, then I'll be happy. Then you do it, but you're not happy. Then you're like, so like you're out of school, then uni, then a job, then married, then kids, then all these things. And then it's like you're just putting your happiness in a thing. And then when you achieve that thing and you don't feel that happy, you're just thinking about the next thing. You don't really appreciate that moment that you're in right now.
No, 100%. It's a feeling. It's not you can't aim. That's why it makes, I don't know, that's why it made no sense to me. You can't aim for like certain things will bring you what brought me happiness back in the day does not bring me happiness now. So like you can't, do you get it? You can't like link it to an attribute, or you can't link it to a place, because everything changes. You change as a person. Different things will start making you happy.
Yeah, it's like, because we all think that, like, you know, in Beyonce's Pretty Hurts, is because she's like, you know, what is your dream? Like, she's like, to be happy.
Yeah. The beginning part.
Yeah. What was the question? I can't remember the question, but it's just like, what is your dream or something, like, or what do you want to achieve in this world?
Yeah.
She just pauses for ages and she's like, I want to be happy. Yeah. So it's like, and everyone has this thing of like, you know, I don't want to be rich, I don't want to have this, I just want to be happy. Like, so it's like this saying now of like, find happiness. So it's such a good, I'm like going to change my way of thinking about that now, because I used to see it like that way. Yeah, so I think that's really interesting, like the way we view happiness. It shouldn't be an end goal. Obviously for us Muslims it's to worship Allah, but I mean loads of people, that might be a reason why people are so unhappy, because they're like chasing this thing that doesn't really exist. Like, we should actually just feel all our emotions. What about specifically with like ethnic minorities? Have you found like within yourself, or have you actually had any like ethnic minority clients, or how do you think therapy is different for them?
I think I'll tell you in two parts, in terms of the patients I met from different ethnic backgrounds, and when I was working there, and their parents' reactions towards, for example, their kids being hospitalized. I think that was definitely a surreal like experience in terms of how they viewed mental health, and the stigma attached to it, in terms of perhaps they weren't really speaking to their family, because one thing we encourage is them to speak to their family members, extended family, friends, about perhaps what they might be going through. But it was that shameness that was surrounding that taboo as well, in terms of, I don't want anyone knowing that my child is hospitalized. And they don't know that later impacts the child, because they're going to hear this stuff as well, and also how they respond to their own mental health. And I think for them as well, it reached crisis points for them. Their kids' mental health reached such a high level that they couldn't really contain it anymore. And now that other services are involved, that feeling of helplessness that comes with it. And I recognized when they were speaking to me, they really liked it whenever I was on shift, and they felt more open with me, and they'll speak to me about their concerns. And that's when I think I recognized how important it was for more ethnics to be within mental health communities. And not even that, like, because I feel like even if you are from a minority background, you still need cultural competencies. You make sure that, because one thing I was learning was not to relate too much, and I think I recognize that with my clients. So my clients would bring up a lot of concerns or issues that perhaps I dealt with, but in my head we call it something. We call it bracketing. So bracketing unrelated thoughts. That's the term we use in therapy, in terms of don't think about how it relates to you. See it as a blank canvas. Obviously, there's some parts that you can't stop your mind from wondering about, and for example, you relating to them, they may come to you as a Black Muslim therapist because they feel like you can relate to them. So that's part's normal, but making sure that the way you relate goes to a certain degree. So making sure that if you hear a story, you don't completely dismiss the impact of it just because you dismiss your experience of that situation. If that makes sense.
So interesting, because you don't want to like put your feelings onto, so like even as teachers, it's like if a child says that their mom beat them just because we come from a certain background where it might not be that serious, you'll have to report it at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean?
That's literally it, in terms of like, so sometimes clients will be talking about stuff and I'll be like, oh damn, like I went through that, but I'm like, no, shit, that's not normal, Salma. You shouldn't have went through that. But then again, I think what they like as well, the feedback I get from my clients is that I'm actually seeing, although I dealt with it, they didn't deal with it fine. And that's something you have to be aware of, because you know when you're speaking to someone, and hopefully you don't have friends like this, but you know certain people when they're like, oh, that happened to me and I'm completely fine.
That's so
Those
jarring.
are the worst type of friends, in terms of you're fine but I'm not, but just like don't relate your situation to someone else's. And I think with clients as well, I make sure I don't do that. I make sure that I'm focusing on their feelings towards that, their reaction towards that situation, as opposed to my reaction towards that situation, and how it impacts me and how it impacts them.
I think that's so good, because I think people love to do that, and like I don't think they always meet, like obviously sometimes they try to be like, well actually I went through this, it's fine, blah blah blah, but it's like, well, you're not me. But other people, sometimes they can do it in like, I don't think they mean it, they're just trying to, as soon as someone says something, if you can relate even just a little bit, you kind of want to show them like I understand and stuff. But it is helpful for them, because like, even though you like, I feel like I'm realizing, obviously I know this, but everyone is so different. So like, even if I think a certain situation is really not that big of a deal, or like it's basically meaningless, like I would never say to someone it's not that deep or something, like because I would hate it if someone said that to me. I think it's like
and I think a lot of time when people say that it's projection, so there's another way of it, in terms of they're unconsciously angry at the fact that you're seeking help for something that they wish they did, but they don't have the confidence to. Like, how comes I didn't have the privilege to complain about this, but you are, in terms of they're projecting that onto you, in terms of I didn't seek help and I'm pissed off at that. So I'm going to make sure that your access to seek help is going to be the same as mine. And there's that projection there.
That is so interesting, because literally in the book, one of her clients is a woman who basically like didn't really treat her children that well, and then she goes on to talk about how, like, because obviously her child was really bad, and she said like sometimes parents can actually be jealous of their own children, because it's like their children are having such a better life than what they had, and they almost feel like it's unfair in a way. And people can be jealous of like their spouses as well, and it's like this weird thing where you would think that when you love someone, like you want better for them, you want, especially your children, like you want something, but because you haven't kind of resolved that inside you, you're like jealous that they have everything. And you might always say like, you have everything, you guys are never grateful or whatever, because you're kind of thinking about yourself.
You see, and it's so sad, because you see it with a lot of parenting as well, like you just mentioned, in terms of they will make things harder for you. And the one way they would explain it was, well, I was completely fine and I never spoke to your mom like that, or this is what happened to me. No, but that's trauma, mom. That's trauma, and we're not normalizing that. Let's not normalize that. But in a way, it's kind of like I think it's that conditioning as well. And with me, I guess I'm not more angry about it. I think it's just more, it's a script pattern, and I think that's the way I see it. It's their script pattern. They've grown up this way, they think it's normal, and I think a lot of parents as well. But one thing I would always say to the younger generation and people, obviously, unless your life is at an immediate threat, don't put yourself in a victim position. And there's something about being in that victim position where you're constantly like, my parents are A, B, and C, they're not making me do this, or they're limiting where I go, or if I want to go on holiday. Unless your life is obviously at danger, I'm always like, don't put yourself in a position where you feel that you have to be victimized, because you're limiting I've always been a firm believer of terms of your parents or other people in your life who are trying to perhaps oppress you have they have their own agency, they've got their own choice. But remind yourself that you also have a choice. And I think a lot of times people forget that they have a choice in a situation, and the choice is going to be uncomfortable. So either it's going to lead to other consequences, for example, your family just like disconnecting from you, or not speaking to you, or your friends just letting go of the friendship, or your friends being rude towards you. It's going to lead to consequences. But always remind yourself that, are you happy now? So the things that you're sacrificing now, you're uncomfortable now, okay? And you making changes is also uncomfortable. You have to choose which uncomfortable you want to go for, if that makes sense. Both situations are uncomfortable, but one will lead you to freedom. One is short-term discomfort, and one is long-term. The long-term discomfort is you putting up with a relationship, or putting up with a script pattern, or putting up with a friendship you don't like. That's long-term consequence. It's going to be ongoing. But short-term consequence is you actually standing up for yourself and being like, I don't want to put up with this anymore. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to feel really like bad. You're probably going to be like belated for it. You're probably going to be like shouted at for it. However, that short-term discomfort is going to lead to something so much far greater, if that makes sense.
That is so interesting. Like, so in this situation, okay, what about this situation? This is kind of like, so a parent, and parents treating people, so obviously parents that are not perfect or anything, they obviously have their own things going on, and they probably need to go therapy as well. What would you say in a situation where maybe you can't say, I'm not putting up with this, because like maybe number one, they won't change, or number two, like maybe you can't leave home, or number three, like I don't know, you can't physically leave. Do you still think there's a choice in, I'm choosing to not let it affect me anymore? Or like, in those situations where you have to put up with it because that's your parents, those are your parents, do you know what I mean? What would you advise in those situations where like you would want them to change, and maybe you have voiced it to them and you've told them, but human beings, as you know, they have their own agency, so they haven't changed, you're still in a situation. What would you advise in that circumstance?
I'll give them the belief that you don't ever do anything or change your behavior or the way you speak with the hopes that someone else will change, because that's another Deadpool. In terms of, you can't change people. You can't, trust me, you cannot change people unless they want to change. Regardless, if you put facts in front of them in terms of, this is A, B, and C, and this is how it's impacting me, regardless of how clear you put it, they would have that, like you mentioned, they would have their own agency, their own autonomy. They've got their own free will. Allah's given them free will as well to actually be like, no, I'm not taking this. So that's when you then decide, okay, so I've done my part to perhaps change their opinion or their views. You still remind yourself you still have a choice. Although, for example, say that your choices are very limited. For example, homelessness. Say you want to leave your house and you're impacted with homelessness, and they're not going to fund your tuition, they're not going to fund your school, or you have no resources for yourself. At that point, obviously see the situation and say, if it's really having a proper impact on your mental health and your well-being and your will to survive, then that's a priority. But if it's something where you can be like in your head, this is going to be short term until I perhaps get into uni, until I make money, but also remember that although you can't make a drastic change then, you can still change your dialogue. Don't engage in the same script pattern that you've done with them your whole life. Don't respond differently in certain ways. Obviously, for example, make sure that they're aware of your changes in terms of how you speak to them as well. Don't be rude towards them, but obviously don't, what was the word again? Don't collude with their behavior, don't enable their behavior, because by you being silent or by you just agreeing with what they say, you're basically being complicit in your own in what's happening at home, if that makes sense. So make sure you don't collude with their behavior, you don't enable their behavior by responding in a certain way, because all of these things are fueling their narrative that what they're doing is okay. So slowly start introducing new things by saying, oh, okay, well, I don't agree with this, but because I'm living in this house, I'm going to put up with it. Certain things like that change the way you speak to them, and then think to yourself, this is temporary. And once I do have the resources, I will move out, or I will find other means. But always remind yourself, never ever say to yourself, you don't have choice. You do have choice, but right now, saying to yourself, if I make this choice right now, it will lead it to far more consequences. So I'm going to put it on hold. But remind yourself, empower yourself, like literally that victim role will not serve you. So if you say my life is doomed, I'm going to be here for the rest of my life, it will not serve you in any way. But always empower yourself by saying, I do have choice, but right now is not the best time because of A, B, and C.
Yeah, so you can just park it. Like, I feel like, that is really good advice. Like, and I feel like what about when it comes to, so ethnic minorities, like you might not be at home, it might not be a physical thing, like you might not be getting abused, right? But it's more like their opinions or their attitudes or their thoughts or the way they behave. Like there's a big difference between obviously our parents that came here and like us lot that were born here. Like, do you think that's like a conflict for a lot of people, and how can they navigate that? Because it's like your parents only know that. So even with therapy, like that, I actually wanted to ask you, like, what was your family's like reaction to that? Or do you think people see it as like, yes, go to therapy is good, or this kind of thing of like, it's fine, like, we grew up, we were fine, even though they are living in like the trauma.
They're not fine.
They're not fine at all. What is that like? For us, it's weird because it's like we understand them, their culture and everything, but then we also understand how important our mental health is. How would you go?
I learned to be with me. I think the one truth I accepted was not changing my parents' opinions unless it impacts my lifestyle, or it impacts if it comes in the way of how I want to live my life, then that's when I perhaps become irritated, or that's when I bring about changes. But now just being okay with the fact that me and my parents have different opinions, and the fact that my parents will not agree with me, or the fact that my parents may say stuff towards me, I'll let them. For example, my parents will say something towards me and I'll give them the space, I'll let them say it, but I'm like, okay, and I'll be respectful, of course, but I'll go in my bedroom and I'm completely okay. I won't let it have an impact on me, because I'm okay with the idea that I'm entitled to my own opinions, and the same way they're entitled to their own opinions. And me trying to change them is not going to work. And I think that sitting with that truth and be like, I'm not going to change my parents, I'm not going to change their ways of thinking, is a truth that, oh my god, it's just so settling, because you feel less responsible. And a lot of times we put responsibilities on ourselves in terms of we have to change the way our parents think. Obviously, if their opinions are impacting your day-to-day life, for example, the way perhaps you function, then that's a different story. But if it's just, my parents have completely different opinions to me in regards to political opinions, in regards to everything, and if anyone else said it, I'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? With my parents, I'm like, yeah, whatever, it is what it is, innit? I'm not, because I'm recognizing the way they've been socialized is completely different, and they're entitled to that opinion. But coming about how they've responded to me going to therapy, Shukri, they know I'm a therapist. Ask me why they were mad. Why were they mad? Shukri, why were they mad I was going to therapy? They were, my mum, I'll tell you my mum's reactions. I think it was pre-pandemic, it was during the pandemic where therapy was online. That was also not a good space for me, because I'm out. I used to do my sessions at 9 a.m. where these people would still be asleep. My mum would be in the kitchen. I'd be like, Mum, I'm in a work meeting, so she wouldn't overhear. And I would hide therapy just so they wouldn't listen to my conversations. And I remember one day, the house was filled and I was going to have my therapy session outside by telephone. And I was like, oh, where are you going? And I was like, oh, I'm going to speak to my therapist. And I was like, you got therapy? I was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, I said your course pays for it. Your course pays for it. I was like, no, I pay for it. And she's like, how much do you pay? I said, £30. £30. I was like, yeah. It's like, yeah, but university's finished. Why are you still paying for it? I thought you said it was, it was compulsory, but I still want to do it. It was during the summer, right?
Yeah.
So she's like, when I come home, I'll speak to your dad. And I was like, Sugary.
About what?
I was like, I'm a therapist. I was like, I'm a therapist. And you're like, you encourage me to speak to people, but you don't want to speak to someone. I was like, what are you speaking to them about? And why are you paying that much money? Who's this lady? Show me what she looks like. And I'm like,
she doesn't want that to know your business.
no, the show, what do you, then she started saying to me, you know, it's hard on someone to talk about family matters outside of the house. Took me. What can I do? If I don't laugh, I'll cry. At that point, I was just laughing. I was like, nah, Hoyo. And with me, I find it like funny, but she was serious. Shukri. My dad, on the other hand, was just very uncomfortable. I was like, oh, are you speaking to a therapist? Like, he was kind of awkward, like, what for? And I went, you know, just about life, about you guys. And
What you
trying
guys?
I'm trying to say, like, about, he's like, about me.
You
He's like,
guys messed me up.
yeah, like, talk about all the things that you guys did from my childhood. And I was like, wait, what? But my parents were uncomfortable, but my mom was more annoyed at the money. She's like, I don't mind if it's free, I don't care if it, because then my mom, she turned around and said, it's gonna give you more experience. I was like, no, it's not about experience, mom. Because anyway, she had to justify it in her
That's
head
like
as
she
to
had
why
to
her
tell
daughter.
herself. Yeah, she had to tell herself that to make herself feel better. They love that thing, like, don't tell people your business. It's like, don't worry, like, it's like the doctor. They can't really, they're not gonna spread your business to the
It's
community.
confidential. And also the fact that why are you moving this way about, what is it about what happened at home that you don't even want other people to know about? So it must have impacted
So
me
you
then.
know. So you know. Oh, God, you're so funny. Okay, so like last few bits. So I'm gonna ask about the inner child. I just want you to, not inner child, inner critic.
Okay.
So like, yeah, just explain a little bit about that.
So the inner critic, we all have inner critics, and I've always said we are like the biggest enemy is ourselves in terms of the way we speak to ourselves. And a lot of times we don't, now I've started to label it as an inner critic. So you know that voice in your head where you're like, oh my God, you're not going to get it, don't revise, don't wake up early, there's no point, you're not going to do your work, or I can't believe you fell so hard on that test, how the hell did you do that? This voice, I feel like we've normalized a lot of times because it's
Yeah,
just
like,
part of
you're
our
so
inner
fat,
monologue.
you fat bitch. I always say that
Yeah. Oh my God, no you don't. Should you say that to yourself?
No, not anymore. Sometimes.
Good. But we don't, that inner critic needs to be patterned, because we all, like I said, we are, even me, the way I'll speak to myself, like now though, I laugh at my inner critic because I'm like, what the hell? Why am I so rude? I'm like, you're so rude.
I'm never
And I
rude to
speak out
anyone like
loud.
this, you know. Yeah.
You're not. And that's one way we work on inner critic is, would you ever speak to your best friend that way? Or would you ever speak to your sister or your loved one that way? And you wouldn't. So why do you speak to yourself that way? And also your inner critic, if being harsh on yourself, there's a quote, if being harsh on yourself worked, you would have achieved everything you wanted. So what is the purpose of it? So you saying to yourself, oh my God, you're so bad, you don't get anything right. People are like, no, but it motivates me, it stops me from being lazy. No, because you would have been getting top grades then if it was motivating you. It
It's still
doesn't
lazy,
motivate you. You're still lazy, you're
Yeah.
still not attaining the thing that you wanted to do. Your inner critic serves no purpose other than destructing you. And also recognizing that when your inner critic, and also your inner critic comes from, in psychodynamic therapy we say a lot of it comes from your script pattern in regards to how your parents perhaps spoke to you, or how your teacher spoke to you, or what your parents deem as important. So say grade, so say if you get a low grade as a younger person, you must have heard your parents saying like, why would you do that, when you're not revising hard, you're lazy. These words you internalize, and when you're older, it then becomes your inner monologue, or even society, what society deems like, you're so fat, or you're so skinny, or you're this, or you're that. These are things that we've heard from when younger, and then we internalize into our adult monologue, into our adult life script. So all these things, your inner critic comes, majority of it comes from your parents, that's what we say, but also becomes from your teachers, from interactions with other people, and then we then deem these words as important. And one thing we always say is that your inner critic, what values does it have? That's one thing we work on. For example, one of my values that my inner critic had was not being lazy, and also make sure that you're the best at everything. And I remember my therapist said to me, is that one of your values, Salma, being the best at everything you do? I was like, no, that's not my value. I don't care about that. My value is just doing things that you enjoy to the best of your ability. She's like, you're holding on to someone else's value. Do you get it? Like, even that you talk about that, if you're hard on yourself, like you're so fat, is that one of your values in terms of being skinny or losing weight? Like, is that a big value of yours? If not, whose value is that, and why the hell have you made it your own? If that makes sense. Like, why are you holding on to someone else's value? Or, oh my God, you can't go outside, you don't have makeup on, everyone's going to look at your eyebrows. Is that something that you care about? No. So whose value is that? It could be your friend Becky, it could be from your mom, it could be your teacher, but just know that you're holding on to values that are not yours. Because in reality, that's not the type of person you are. You will never say that out loud. And another thing we say is that if your inner critic was a real person and they came up to you and they were like, oh my God, you're so stupid, you're so dumb, how the hell did you do that? It's shocking. What would you do if your inner critic was a real person, they came up to you and they'll say these things to you?
I would be like, what on earth is going on here? Like, I would not be happy with that. I'd just be like, what the hell?
What on earth is going on here?
Yeah.
You wouldn't be happy, but you go, like, you better go away, you distance yourself because it's not good vibes, it's not good energy. So why are you letting this person, this inner critic, live within you, if that makes sense?
And there is a difference, yeah, because I feel like saying things like, oh, you're so fat, you're so ugly, is different to like, let's lose weight to be healthy so you feel good.
Yeah.
And let's look about what we wear so we feel good. Like those don't make you feel as sad as, obviously there's we know the difference between an insult and actually like changing for the better,
Yeah, constructive. And there is, I don't think you'd ever get rid of your inner critic. I think even therapists, I've got an inner critic to this day, but the only difference is it's less powerful. So don't aim for your inner critic to go away. It's always going to be there. Do you get it? But make it less powerful in terms of, now I literally, shock you, when I hear my inner critic, I laugh.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my stupid God. And I'm like, what the hell, like, Salma? And I speak out loud to myself, like, what the hell, you're so rude. Like, I laugh at it because I'm like, it's not that deep. Do you get it? I'm like, it's not that deep. Like, why now? And now my inner critic, I notice it far less strongly because I literally laugh at it and I'm like, it's not like and I'm also labeling it. I'm saying this is not how I view myself, is my inner critic. I'm labeling it now, so it becomes less impactful, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that is amazing. This is I love that, seeing that on your Instagram page as well. There's so many things on there, honestly, and I feel like I could talk to you forever, but I'm just gonna ask one last question because the people asked this. So, how to deal with intrusive thoughts? Maybe you can say what intrusive thoughts are, and then how to deal with unrequited love. So just those are the last two questions.
And yeah, sure. Intrusive thoughts. I guess the one best advice I got was, first of all, it depends, because I know how people view intrusive thoughts. So the way we view intrusive thoughts is thoughts that are unwelcomed, or thoughts that you didn't even consciously think about, or thoughts that are just appearing in your conscious mind that you have no control over. So some people have intrusive thoughts, and then the way intrusive thoughts are perhaps harming other people, or saying that you're looking at someone, you have thoughts of perhaps harming them, or running up to them, or punching them, or you have like, proper, like, do you get intrusive thoughts, Shukri? Because I want people to recognize, like, thoughts that you don't like having, like, oh, I feel bad about myself, I don't like myself, I don't see them as intrusive. But intrusive thoughts are more things that are like really shocking, if that makes sense. Do you get like really shocking thoughts sometimes?
I don't think so, but sometimes, yeah. So basically, like, this is weird. I don't know if it's an intrusive thought, but sometimes, when I'm walking past like on a bridge, like where there's river, where there's water, like I always think, like, imagine I just threw my phone or something, or imagine I jumped, but I would never do it. I don't want to commit suicide. I don't want to commit suicide.
Yeah.
I always just think, imagine if that happened. I just always think it. I don't know.
No, those are literally intrusive thoughts that you're like, within yourself that you would never imagine doing. So like the unwanted thoughts that just like come up, that unwanted without warning. So just kind of repetitive, and the same thoughts can come up, and it can be quite distressing.
Yeah.
So when people use intrusive thoughts, making sure that they recognize the really distressing thoughts, or even distressing or disturbing thoughts. So they're not just thoughts in your head like, oh my God, I hate myself, or I don't like myself. Those are just those are thoughts that perhaps are not nice or desirable, but intrusive thoughts are thoughts that are quite impactful. So, and I know a lot of people do get intrusive thoughts, and one thing we say is, with intrusive thoughts, one thing I'll say is that reminding yourself of, these are things that I had no control over, and it's welcoming. It doesn't have meaning. Stop assigning meaning. Just because you had that intrusive thought of throwing your phone into the water, or perhaps running into the water, or even hitting someone, or running up and like doing A, B, and C, just telling yourself that you had no control over this, and also you don't have to assign meaning to it. Like, do you know how us Muslims, we say, gym? Because a lot of thoughts are like either brought by shaitans or whatnot, but just making sure that and with me, the way I deal with my intrusive thoughts is by laughing at it. I'm like, oh my God, that's crazy.
No, but they honestly make me laugh. Like, sometimes, I know this is weird, but like, even at uni, when I'd go to see my supervisor, or when I'm in a meeting with just one other person, I sometimes think, like, imagine I just slapped them.
Yeah, but babe, do you see how you laugh at it? Because deep down you would never
laugh,
do it.
It's ridiculous, because I would never ever do it. But I mean, I can imagine if that, it doesn't replay a lot. It's just like, I'll think about it. But it's like, because it's just such a crazy experience. But I mean, I can imagine it being quite distressing for some people,
Yeah, very distressing for some people. And also recognizing within yourself that you're not you're less likely, you're not likely to do these things. Just understand like how much your sense of self, for example, how much do you know yourself, and how much control you have as well. Have you ever acted on these intrusive thoughts? And they're unwelcome and they're very distressing, but also first recognizing the relationship you have with them, like when they start appearing, and also recognize, the more you pay attention to it and the more you place meaning on it, the we call it like you're feeding that monster, you're making it bigger and bigger. Your fear and anxiety is feeding this intrusive thought, which makes it more prominent, because you're like, when you're anxious about something and
Think
you
about it.
constantly think about it, you make the situation bigger and bigger, as opposed to perhaps laughing about it or just being like, oh, okay, that was an intrusive thought, and like letting it go. But I know with some unwelcome thoughts, or say that you're ruminating, I'll say another situation that people have a lot, where they ruminate about the past or past experiences or past situations or things they've done in the past that they regret. First of all, perhaps try to unpack what is it that we call it you have unfinished business. There's a reason why you haven't perhaps let go of it completely, because you probably haven't dealt with that situation yet, or you feel like you haven't had closure within yourself, or there's something you've left unsaid. So deal with that unfinished business, see how you can deal with it, see if you need to speak to someone about it, see if you need to journal, but don't suppress it. Like, either write it down somewhere, speak to someone about it, and see if that helps. But another thing is creating boundaries with your thoughts. So one thing my lecturer taught me was creating structure in terms of how often you should ruminate. So say you're thinking about something, say you get your test results back on in 3 weeks time, and it's something that you're constantly thinking about and you can't sleep, it's on your mind, you can't really focus on your eating. One thing I would say is place your thoughts with like structure, in terms of I'm only going to boundaries. So I'm only going to think about my results on my way to college, or when I'm going outside for my bike ride, or when I'm speaking to mama at dinner. So remind yourself that, hey, I'm not ignoring you, I'm not ignoring this thought, because ignoring it will make it bigger and bigger and bigger. Do you get it? I'm not ignoring it, but I'm going to allocate you a time as to when I'm going to think about it. So in that way, we're not encouraging suppression, we're just encouraging boundaries with your thoughts, in terms of, right now it's bedtime, it's 10 p.m, it's not appropriate for me to think about this because I need to go to bed, but I promise myself that I'm going to think about it tomorrow on my way to school. Do you get it? Because sometimes ruminating can help you feel less anxious as well. But it's like creating boundaries with your thoughts and structure, so you feel you need to feel contained and you need to feel controlled.
Yeah, definitely. That is honestly such good advice. I'm going to be listening to this back and taking all these notes. But and lastly, they asked about the unrequited love. What do you think about
that? What's your opinion of that first, Shukri? I want to know your opinion.
Me, I've not been in that situation. No, I'm joking. Unrequited love. So for me personally, I can never experience unrequited love, because I don't really, in terms of like a romantic relationship, because I never fancy people that don't fancy me. Like, it's not a possibility. I think, oh yeah, like they're really difficult for me, because I can never like, but unrequited love, like to truly love, not like a crush
Love,
like, to love someone that does not love you back. Like, to me, I don't really see that as love, because when I love someone, it's like, oh, I love them like because they love me, or because they do me, or because, like, do you know what I mean? Rather than like, I mean, okay, the only way I could see it is like friendship, I guess, because then you do have that close relationship. Because I was thinking it more like that person doesn't even really know you, but I guess if you're friends and you could genuinely love them and they don't love you back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think?
With me it's hard, and I don't think I've ever been in that situation, because either it would be like through TV, or I'm like, oh my god, I've got this crush on someone on TV, when I know it wouldn't be love though, because I feel like with love you've now moved from liking or crushing to this infatuation, in terms of even like you actually love every part about them, but you know that they don't love you back, but there's something about you that's still holding you on to this, perhaps this unrequited relationship or this unrequited friendship. There's something within you that's still making this relationship attainable for you, and I think that's what I would first explore. What is it about this person, and why is it important for them to reciprocate that love? And what is it about them specifically as well? And also letting go as well, and also looking back at your self-worth as well, and how much this will hinder your ability to live your full life and also move on. So these things will have an impact on you. So if you love them, I say, first of all, look at what it is about them specifically. What are they bringing you? Were they bringing you comfort? Were they bringing you compliments? Were they bringing you safety? Were they giving you containment? Were they giving you gifts? Were they giving you this possibility of a future that was so like unattainable, but they made it attainable? Like, what hopes and dreams perhaps were they giving you, or before that, or what things, what promises were they giving you beforehand that made this perhaps love like so real for you? So try to explore that, and also I think link it, and like I said, also link it back to your self-love as well. Would you want to be in a relationship where it's not reciprocated, or someone's not loving you back? And are you addressing your own needs? You know, it's like you're going against your own self. You know that you deserve something, but you're not doing what you deserve. Does that make sense? You're putting yourself in a relationship that you know is not attainable, is not reciprocal, and why is that okay for you? Do you get it? Why is that okay and why is it important for you to be in this relationship with someone else when they don't perhaps value the same things that you value, or they don't love you back?
Yeah,
Which
definitely.
is quite sad.
I know, yeah, it's sad. I feel like that will definitely help that person that's in that in. And I feel like that's literally a whole nother thing, like, you know, like relationships and love languages. So like you definitely need to come back, because I literally feel like we just got started. But like I know it's getting long, but honestly, like, but I mean that though, like definitely come back and we'll talk about
Yes.
literally there's self-love, there's family relationships, there's romantic relationships, like there's so much to like unpack. But
100%.
thank you so much for coming, Salma.
Oh, you're more than welcome, Shoki. I honestly loved it. I loved it so much, and I loved how it felt so natural as well. And I can't wait to hear it back.
It was so nice. I'm actually excited to edit it because I'm gonna keep learning. But thank you so much. Have a lovely evening, my darling. And
You too, my
I'll see
darling.
you soon. All right, salam, babe.
Salam, babes.